Welcome back, y'all. In this video, I like to discuss how we can use the TI-83 to make a scatter plot and find linear regression equation. All right, now suppose we got a table of data here showing the percent of adults with diabetes. Now this table is really just two columns, right? It's really a long two-column table. But instead of making it two columns, they divided it up into, three sets of two columns. But don't let that confuse you. Just imagine these second two columns here to be underneath the first two, and then these last two columns to be underneath those previous two columns, right? So that is just one or two columns, two long columns of data, all right? I think when they write it like this, it's just easier to write down more stuff here instead of, it takes up less space, all right? So anyway, we want to use this data to make a scatter plot, right? And the second thing we want to do is find a linear model. And another word for linear model is a linear regression equation. All right, and then we want to answer a couple of questions about that linear model that we find. All right, so how do you use a graphing calculator to draw a scatter plot of data? All right, and we also want the x values of each of these points representing the number of years after 2000. So for example, in the year 2010, for example, there were 14.8% of adults who had diabetes. But we want X to represent the number of years after 2000. So instead of 210 here, we can put 10. When we sketch our scatter plot, we're going to use 10 instead of 2010. Here we're going to use 15 instead of 2015, and so on. All right, let's go ahead and try to do it. All right, so first, we're going to, first thing you do, right, is you're going to click on Stat, right, Stat. And then after you click on Stat, you want to click Enter, where it's highlighted to edit that. All right. And once you click on Enter, you're going to see L1, L2, L3 column. And under the L1 column, you want to enter the year data, right? All of the year data. And again, don't put 2010 in, you want to put the number of years after 2000. So the first value under the L1 column is going to be 10, right? So I put 10 and then enter. And next, 15, enter. 20, enter, and so on. All right, now that we've got all of the year values entered in, now I'm going to right arrow to the L2 column, and here I'm going to type in the percent values. So 14.8, enter, 16.7, enter, and so on. right, and then after you enter in all your data, be sure to check to see if the same number of data are entered in both columns. All right, and after that, after entering the data, you want to go back to stat, and then you want to go to you want to go to second. Click the second button, not stat, but the second button, and then you want to click on stat plot, which is the y equals button. All right, and then you want to turn on your plot. Right now my plot is off, so I want to enter that and I want to turn it on. So it's blinking on, so I click enter, and now that it's on, I just now click on graph, and you can see that it tries to graph my data, but there's nothing showing up, right? So here, what you got to do, or one thing you can do, is go to zoom, right? Click on zoom, and then down arrow until you get to zoom stat, right? Here's zoom stat, and then click enter. And then here is our scatter plot of this data, right? So you can see it's approximately in the form of a line. It's ascending, so it's positive. And then, a best fit line can go through there. And, another thing that you can do here is you can click on window, and you can see the settings that the calculator made to accommodate your data, right? So the minimum X value they chose was 6, even though the smallest data value you had to enter was 10. They gave a little smaller, right? So they try to give a little smaller and a little bigger than the biggest data value to cover all of your values. All right, so that's how you would make a scatter diagram or scatter plot of data. All right, so now that we've done question A, let's move on to finding a linear model or a regression equation. All right, so the idea is that since the scatter plot has the general shape of a line, we can fit a best fit line through this data. And so this data can be modeled by a line, okay? And we want to come up with the equation of that line, all right? So to find the equation of that line, or the model, a linear model, all we do is we click on stat, and then we right arrow to calc, and then we down arrow to linear regression, right? And then enter, and then enter one more time, and then it pops out, the constant values for our, linear equation. So in this case, our linear equation looks like it is, if we round to the nearest hundredth, y equal 0.53 plus 10.14. Y equal, let me write it down here, y equal 0.53 x plus 10.14, right? And they didn't specify what to round to, so we just, use our best judgment. We got the nearest hundredth, All right, so that takes care of finding a linear model. And then next, how would you use this model to predict the percent of adults with diabetes in 2041? And, in 2041, the X value there is 41, see? And so you're going to substitute 41 into your linear model. So doing that, you'll get 0.53 times 41 plus 10.14. This is approximately, what was this? I forget what it was. I think it's 31.87. Okay, so that means that in 2041, we expect the percentage of adults with diabetes to be 31.87. Right? Let me write that down. So in 2041, the percentage of there will be 31.87% of adults with diabetes. Right? And look at part D now. They say, in what year does the model predict percent to be 19.11%? All right, in what year does the model predict percent to be 19.11%? All right, so here we're finding the year now, right? So Y represents the percent and X represents the year, or the number of years after 2000. So here what we're given, in any word problem, be very clear what you're given and what you got to find. And we want to find the year. We're given the percent. So for D, we're going to say 19.11 equal 0.53 X plus 10.14. This is our setup because they gave us the percent. We're trying to find X. And now we just solve this equation to get X by itself, right? So when you subtract 10.14 from both sides, when you do some algebra on this, you'll eventually get that X is 17, right? And so this means that in 2017, 19.11% of adults have diabetes.